This is the Master Brewers Podcast, brought to you by the Master Brewers Association of the Americas, a volunteer organization dedicated to continually improving the products and processes of our membership since 1887.
Let's go!
Master Brewers brings you interviews with the industry's best and brightest in brewing science, technology, and operations.
Calm down, I'm moving too fast.
This Master Brewers podcast is proudly sponsored by Hopsteiner, a global leader in the hop industry focused on quality, sustainability, and innovation in new hop varieties and hop products. Contact our brewery sales team to provide you with the hop-related tools you need to craft your next great beer. For more information, visit hopsteiner.com.
Additional support provided by
Get to know Proximity Malt. We malt superior, European-style, low-protein varieties grown close to home in Delaware and Colorado. Domestically grown, precisely malted to style. With our team of seasoned experts and 2 brand-new malt houses, try what's really new in malt. Check us out at www.proximitymalt.com.
And if you see a big bubble and a lid goes on that big bubble with frog eye, you know you're way over 100 just with one decent sized bubble.
Well, we had a great time recording podcasts during the live event in Calgary as part of the 2019 Master Brewers Conference, which you're about to hear was one of my favorites. I don't know about you, but I sure have tasted a lot of oxidized canned craft beer. It's both disappointing and terrible for our industry. This week on the show, our friends at Goose Island talk about their journey reducing TPO on a small-scale canning line. And they've got plenty of tips we can all leverage to make better beer.
Hi, my name is Mike Kanya, and I'm with Goose Island Beer Company in Chicago.
My name is Brooke Bell, and I'm with Goose Island Beer Company in Chicago.
You've got some real-world examples of an oxidation problem. Tell us what you were noticing.
Yeah, we started up a smaller scale can line at Goose Island in Chicago, and we were running TPOs routinely with our sample plan, and we're seeing numbers that were just beyond our level of acceptability and saleability, numbers in the 400s all the way up to the thousands. And we knew that would be a rapid oxidation problem for us and knew we needed to take quick action.
Were you picking that up in sensory as well?
Definitely, yes. We run our taste panel on a daily basis and check every package sample. And we had beers that were failing before 30 days and had a 90-day, 120-day shelf life on them. And we're unhappy with how quickly it was falling out of profile.
Were you seeing those high numbers in other packages or just in this particular package?
We are also running a bottle line, and we were seeing great numbers on the bottle line. So this all had to do with our Wild Goose line. And typically we want our numbers well under 100. We target under 72. And like Brooke was saying, we're getting numbers well into the hundreds and over 1,000 at times.
Okay, before we talk about what did work, what kind of adjustments were you trying that just weren't working?
We went through like a whole brainstorming program and just had basically a blank whiteboard and just thought, what could possibly be contributing to our high TPO issue? Is it the bright tank itself, that setup? Is it the filler, the closing process, the environment itself? And with air movement or chemicals, just kind of anything goes type of brainstorming. And we basically approached the line in a systematic way, from the rinser through to the purge tubes to the filler, between the filler and the lid dropper and everything, trying to systematically troubleshoot. And we would find little things here and there that would bring it down 50, 100 ppb, but not necessarily overall solve our problem on a consistent basis. So we knew we just had to continue to move down the line, brainstorm modifications, just try to figure out if we had a smoking gun, but basically starting from the decal through to a finished can of beer.
Yeah, and one interesting thing we're testing on the purging of the CO2. Was it too low, too high? A lot of thoughts that if it was too fast, it was bringing in air into the can. And so we isolated that, did some tests, and we turned out that purging will bring it down 50, 100, but it won't bring it down hundreds of parts per billion.
Okay, after all that, you really hit your stride and had an average of 48 ppb over 4 months, which is amazing. What happened?
Well, a lot of it we worked with, like Work was saying, we did all the different brainstorming, and probably the biggest thing we did, well, number one, you got to get good foam quality, and we worked with Wild Goose, and we got a foam scraper added to the line, and also with a foam blaster that blasts the extra foam off. So the most important thing, I think, you get good quality foam, and even if you have poor quality foam, make sure it comes over the can and you scrape that foam off.
Okay, you zeroed in on 5 factors that had the biggest impact on TPO. What were those?
Our 5 were our beer temperature, the filler base pressure that the beer was coming in at, our dissolved CO2 in solution, as well as the beer style itself, of course, and the rate at which you fill the can. So those 5 things come together and really were the secret sauce that we found to get that foam integrity that Mike was talking about, that really dense, small bubbled foam that would come up over the edge of the can as you were filling it before it hits the scraper and the lid drops on there. So we could watch the can line run and say like good foam, bad foam, high TPO, low TPO, just as, it's 35 cans a minute. So you could probably kiss every can as it goes by. So we could really dial in on what it looks like. And that's some of our hope from this study, was to be able to take our data and synthesize into something that other brewers could literally look at and know and have an actionable reaction to their line.
Yeah, just like you were saying, you could watch it go by, and you could actually predict what the TPO will be kind of just by eyes. And if you see a big bubble and a lid goes on that big bubble, the frog eye, you're way over 100 just with one decent sized bubble. So
you don't even need a meter.
Count your bubbles.
Great. Okay, walk us through each of those 5 variables and tell us how you optimize them.
Sure. Yeah, we'll start with the beer temperature. So the beer temperature, what we really wanted was to control gas breakout when the beer hits the can line. So we realized that 34 degrees was really that optimal temperature. And so we did some studies to figure out what our pickup was between our bright tank and the filler base. And so we would adjust our bright tank set point based on how many degrees Fahrenheit we'd pick up on the way to the filler base. So our bright tank we wanted at 32 because we knew we would have an average of 2 degrees change, and so it would hit our filler base at 34.
Yeah, and just on the temperature, just if 34 works because you can get enough foam, but it's not so much foam that you're losing a lot of beer. So warm works, and if you can seal it quickly, that'll work. But we found 34 is optimal. It might be 35 for somebody else, 33, but for our majority of our beers, 34 is a good spot.
The next one was the filler base pressure. So we found that the range of about 13 to 16 psi at the filler base was really what got us where we wanted, just having that constant pressure, because it's an all open, all closed filler situation. So that was what we found was something we could hold constant and just make sure we had that consistent pressure coming in for consistent fills and operation of the line. Our dissolved CO2 was our next one. Before at Goose, we had 2.7 as our set point, 2.7 volumes per volume of CO2 for our beer, but found that was a little bit too high for this can line. We were getting too much breakout, too much foaming over, losing beer, and it was a little much. So we dialed that back to 2.6 for all our beers, all our set points, and we're able to hold that constant as well. So that's just one of those variables that from our design of experiments approach for this, we just need to hold these various things constant to be able to then fine or tune our other variables and know that we have a controlled thing going on. So dissolved CO2 was a big one that we knew we could hold constant.
Yeah, that's right. And the next one was the can fill rate. That's probably the most important one. What we found is you can't fill too slow. You're not going to have that foam breakout. So what you need is a fast fill and the foam rise. Get it, and what we were talking about earlier, get that dense foam and get that rising over the can and get that scraped off and get that lid on there.
Coming up,
We were seeing that foam like carry over. So we have good can, bad can, good can, bad can. And we were finding those patterns. So we knew we needed to redesign something.
I'm John Bryce, and you're listening to the Master Brewers Podcast from the Master Brewers Association of the Americas. Support for this podcast is brought to you by
ABS Commercial is a full-service brewery and parts outfitter. From our Raleigh headquarters to our Denver office, we proudly offer brew houses and fermenters from 3 barrels and up, yeast brinks, boilers, kegs, chillers, tri-clamp, and other stainless parts, all with the quickest delivery and lead times in the industry. Learn more at abs-commercial.com or call 877-BREW-ABS. ABS Commercial. We are brewers.
additional support provided by
Bring the world to your brewhouse with BSG's diverse selection of ingredients and services. Our dedicated customer service team and industry experience provides you with the assistance you need every step of the way. Make BSG your supplier of choice with products essential to making great artisanal beverages so you can stay focused on your craft. Visit us at bsgcraftbrewing.com or contact us at 1-800-374-2739.
Here's what's coming up on the Master Brewers calendar. District Rocky Mountain meets at Breckenridge Brewery in Littleton, November 12th. District St. Paul, Minneapolis meets at the Raw Malting Bierstube, November 14th. District Milwaukee meets at Milwaukee Brewing Company, November 21st. District St. Louis meets November 21st. District Northern California meets at Sudwork Brewing in Davis, November 21st. District Midwest meets at Great Lakes Brewing, November 23rd. District Eastern Canada meets in Montreal, November 28th, and the District St. Louis annual holiday party is December 6th. Check out the full calendar of events at mbaa.com for more details or to find a district meeting near you. Now back to the show.
And finally is beer style. So we all know that beer is going 1,000 different directions right now in what's considered beer in a lovely, flavorful way. And so you'll see a lot of low foam production beers, whether it's a barrel-aged beer or a fruited beer, some sour beers just with that quickly collapsing foam. So we found that understanding your beer style and that foam integrity just intrinsic to the style of beer is important to pay attention to as well. And if it's something that does have a quickly dissipating foam, you'll need to agitate the beer and kind of encourage that gas to come out of solution. So on our line, there's something called a foam pulse setting that you could set up, and so that it would basically agitate to encourage that foam production before it hits the foam scraper.
Yeah, that's right. So I would say, number one, try to get that fast fill. If that's not working for you because of the beer style, add some foam pulses, play around with it, and hopefully you get that foam coming up. If it's not great foam, just at least get it up where it's coming up over the can and hopefully scrape it off and check your TPOs from there. But really still, foam quality is still number one.
Then if your brewery doesn't have a TPO measuring piece of instrumentation, like for example, we have a Hawk Orbisphere 6110. What you can do is measure your DOs and then shake your can to homogenize the headspace of the can into the beer and then check it again so you can see what that difference is, accounting for that headspace. And that's really what we found was our main contributor was that headspace oxygen and the oxygen being captured in the bubbles from that open air can line. So if you have that dense foam pushing out by controlling those 5 things, then you're basically purging your headspace in a nice, consistent way.
That's awesome. You made a couple of modifications to your can line. Talk about those.
Yeah, so we, from the operators to the supervisors, all through packaging and quality, we all work together. And one of the big helps was getting the manufacturer Wild Goose to come out there and test for us. We're sort of like a beta tester for them. So we added that the CO2 tunnel with the scraper on there, and also a foam blaster. The CO2 tunnel with the scraper, that'll scrape off some of those air pocket bubbles on the foam. Add some CO2 to blanket it with CO2, and then right away get the lid on there. The what they call the foam, I don't know what they're calling it now, but I think it's the foam blaster.
Dio Buster?
Oh yeah, it is the Dio Buster. That's right. But and so part of it was we also added a little like a tube that shoots out some CO2 to blast the foam, because there's always foam hanging around on this line, and and it will drip down into some cans. So what you want to do is after every 5 can cycle, we blast that foam right off. And so the next set of 5 has clean, and you're not going to have CO2 dripping. Foam dripping back in.
We learned a good lesson in just manufacturer relationships too, and kind of working and collaborating with them on getting equipment to meet your expectation as a brewer, and working collaboratively with them to design something. We went through a couple different versions of the Dio Buster. We had one that just had a flat edge, and we were seeing that foam like carry over. So we have good can, bad can, good can, bad can, and we were finding those patterns. So we knew we needed to redesign something, and then continuing to push with them and providing reliable data really is what got us to where we needed to be, to say, oh, okay, here's a data-driven piece of information we have for you that this isn't exactly what we're looking for. Can we work together? How can we keep finding solutions? There was one point where we were like playing around with, do we need lasers for this line? Like what can we possibly do? So we had a lot of fun with them designing and figuring out what was going to work sustainably, and now all the new lines come with it. So that's kind of a cool contribution, that these smaller scale open air can lines, you can find these safe to work with CO2 tunnels that really help keep your TPO down.
It's kind of weird that they didn't name them after you, though.
I asked them to. I don't know. We'll see. What Brooke was saying is exactly right. Just if you're, instead of banging your head against the wall and not getting good results, call the manufacturer. They're there to help. Wild Goose they helped a lot. They answer. They'll come out and they'll talk to you on the phone, whatever it takes. So and if you don't have this, they could add it. I think you could purchase them after the fact, and they'll come out and install it.
And I know we're all visual folks, so describing foam and describing equipment can be kind of tough. So we'll have our pictures from the MBAA talk that we gave. So if people want to see images of what we consider good foam and what we consider poor foam, we'll have those out there.
Definitely. We'll link to that in the episode and everything so people can have access to those. Did you have, so you said you gave your presentation yesterday. Did you have any particularly interesting questions from the audience or anything that would be worth mentioning?
We got some good questions. I think the thing that surprised me the most was a lot of people were curious in our troubleshooting approach. I'm not sure if we included our brainstorming map of everything that we thought of, and it was kind of interesting. People came up and were like, tell us more about that. Like, how did you do that? What did you do? How did you prioritize? So I think taking people through our troubleshooting was something I didn't expect. I thought people would be more interested in our results. How do I get this actionable item? And they asked a lot of questions on how we rolled things out, how we took the time to control the variables so we knew when we'd had our smoking gun. So that was cool to be able to talk about the problem solving a bit.
Nice. Anything else?
Brooke pretty much covered. There's a lot of people using this line, and maybe they don't have the instrumentation to test it. So hopefully, this will help them, get some good low TPO numbers on their can line.
And Mike mentioned at our District Northern Illinois meeting, I liked your point about if you're working with a mobile canner, maybe the DO Buster tunnel, it takes 15 minutes to put on a line and take off. It's really easy to install. So as a brewery, even if you're running with a mobile canner, maybe buy just this piece, and then when they come in, you could apply it to their line so that, you're kind of maintaining the quality and reassuring that for your beer, even if it's not a line that you own.
That was Brooke Bell and Mike Kanya here on the Master Brewers Podcast. You can find their presentation as part of the 2019 Master Brewers Conference proceedings. The proceedings will be available at mbaa.com in just a couple of weeks. Look for links in the show notes soon. Check out the brand new Master Brewers Podcast website. You'll find guest profiles, information about upcoming live events, and more, all at masterbrewerspodcast.com. Are you enjoying the Master Brewers Podcast? Let me tell you about a simple way you can help us keep making more. Take a minute to thank our sponsors. There's no way we could produce this show without generous support from sponsors like Hopsteiner, ABS, Proximity Malt, and BSG. So please, let them know you heard their message on the Master Brewers Podcast and that you appreciate their support.